Okay, firstly, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar on building marketing and sales capabilities essential to beat the market. It is a big, important strategic topic, so we're going to look to cover as much ground as possible in the hour that we have today. There will be time for questions at the end, so please ask them in the questions box in the control panel, and we will circulate copies of the webinar, recorded copies of the webinar and presentations afterwards. But obviously there's any topics that you would like to explore in more depth, if there's some things that we just sort of touched on, I'm sure all the speakers would be happy to, to pick this up offline and spend 15 minutes just trying to point you in the right direction. So my name is Scot McRae. I'm the Managing Director of McRae&Co, and we specialise in demand generation for companies that are ambitious to grow. So demand generation is the process of sustainably creating win-ready leads for sales, doing it in a way that is long-term and sustainable, scalable, and in the most cost-effective manner, and we call that manufacturing demand. We've been doing it for 9 years. We're one of the UK specialists, and we use a bunch of tools and technologies to help us as we work with some of the UK's fastest growing companies. So I'm going to talk about what's changed and what does that mean for people. And then finally, we have our second user case study from Steve Whitmarsh, who's the Managing Director of RunYourFleet.com. He's going to talk about how small organizations can grow exceptionally fast and compete against big players. But first, what's changed? Okay, so we now live in an age of information abundance. Information is everywhere in multiple sources, on multiple channels, in multiple mediums, of multiple depth as well. And there are lots and lots of reference points that buyers can go and access and refer the information that they want. So this has led to a transformation in the buyer behavior. Buyers can now get all the information that they need themselves to make the majority of the purchasing decisions and progress through the majority of their purchasing cycle. We've all seen the stats. 67% of buying decisions have been made by the time that buyers are ready to have a face-to-face conversation with vendors, i.e. sales teams. That's forecast to go to 80% over the next 5 years by Gartner and Forrester. And if you want to bring it back to your kind of personal situations, just think about how you would personally go about buying a car now as to what you would have done 5 years ago, and think of the steps that you would have gone through and how that would have been different. You are not interested in talking to a representative from Audi or Hyundai until you walk into the garage as a negotiating buyer. So we've moved in the shift from information scarcity, which is, way back in the day, the people that knew most about mops were the guys that came round to the door and tried to sell you mops. So information scarcity, where the vendors and the sales teams held all the knowledge, to information abundance, where the buyers have all the knowledge and are exceptionally well educated. And that shift is called attentionomics. And it means that we now need to compete much, much more effectively for the buyer's share of mind. And you could call that or imagine that as B2B consumerization. This has big implications for sales and big implications for marketing. And McKinsey research has proven that companies with better sales and marketing capabilities grow 30% faster than their peers. So what I want you to think about when you think about what's changed is the shift from information scarcity to information abundance, that dynamic of attentionomics and how that is leading to a transformation in your buyers. B2B consumeration of buyer behavior is more self-directed and it's self-educated. Big new requirement or a new dawn for sales and marketing, and building the capabilities is going to make you grow faster than competition. So what does that mean? So at any one time, there's only 3 to 4% of your total addressable market will be sales ready or ready for a sales conversation. But yet marketing continue to pass 85% of leads that are not sales ready and should never go to sales. So we have and always have had this big disconnect where sales looks at some of the leads that marketing has and concludes that they're just weak or not good enough, and marketing looks at sales and concludes that actually they didn't follow up on all the leads, so sales must be lazy. And it's getting worse, okay, with buyers disappearing. So the requirement for marketing to deliver high quality win ready leads to sales and for sales to convert them grows every single day as CEOs look to marketing sales to deliver.
Okay, thank you very much.
To deliver top line growth. Hi, Steve. I think you might need to. Yeah, I've just muted Steve. He just came in, I think. So, so we can see though that during the last 5 years, the average B2B sales cycle has become 22% longer. It's typically got 3 more decision makers participating in the buying process. 90% of business buyers will say that when they're ready to buy, they'll find you. So the pressure on marketing sales is growing all the time. So what does that mean? What I want you to think about is that on marketing is now responsible for the awareness stage, the education stage, and the consideration phases. They have to drive engagement, and that is when they've got lots of data. So they need to scientifically work out how they're going to help to drive engagement around segmentation and targeting. They need to be able to nurture prospects to into the consideration stage. So the idea that you can use sales and marketing to accelerate people through the sales pipeline just doesn't stack up. Buyers will buy when they've got BANT. They will buy when they're ready. So for us, the mantra always has to be is that when they are ready to talk, when they are ready to have a conversation, let's make sure that we're in the lead. Let's make sure we are in the top 3, ideally the top 1, because we've led the conversation, and marketing has to lead that. So you need to focus in, number 4, on who is sales ready. Focus on those 4%, okay? The CEOs are going to be looking at you increasingly from a marketing point of view as being a critical lever top line growth. So you're going to have to prove the efficacy of marketing, and you have to prove it for every dollar spent and the ROI. And you need to be fast, agile, and simple. The pressure on sales is that you're getting squeezed into compressed sales cycles. You don't have sales teams don't have a long time to get to know the buyer, get to know the organization's pains, develop the value proposition for both. Buyers engage late and they're very well informed, but sales teams need to prove value early. A terrifying stat from the States is that when they asked B2B buyers, 70% of American B2B buyers said that when they first engaged with sales, 70% of those sales teams were not ready, and 70% never got a repeat appointment or call. Now, if you think of the investment in getting to that stage and having a conversation with a buyer, that's a horrific stat. So the buyer's journey is non-linear, it's multi-channel, and it comes from anywhere. So again, you've really got to focus in on the 4% that are ready for a sales conversation. Sales CEOs are looking for you to deliver the growth plans for the organization, prove your efficacy, produce ROI, build predictable pipelines, and run an integrated demand funnel. So I want you to imagine a world. If you think of all the potential people in your market who at some time will have the problem that your product or service can solve, and you call them prospects, okay? Imagine those prospects as eggs. Now, if you could identify which eggs were about to hatch, and the definition of an egg that's about to hatch is a decision maker who's got a problem that you can solve, who's got BANT, okay, so they've got budget, authority, need, and time now, but more importantly, they've educated themselves on your organization, on your proposition, such that they want to talk to you. Okay, if you can identify those people ahead of competition and you get them into your incubator and surround them with sales love, then how much more? And that's all you did. Okay, you didn't spray and pray. You didn't talk to you didn't chuck spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks. You just talked to those people, those eggs that were about to hatch. How much more effective do you think your sales operations would be? What do you think you could achieve? Okay, so in order to do this, and we have, if we go back to the last slide, there's definitely route 1 would be traditional marketing, route 2 would be inbound marketing, but we use a different route, which is what we call route 3, which is through the funnel marketing, where we build world-class databases, we develop the content that the buyers need at every stage to enable them to self-educate and self-direct their journey. We put together We put together fairly complex lead nurturing programs with lead scoring models to surface the ones that are sales ready, and we use lead management to make sure the integrated funnel is. So what you have to focus on here from a marketing point of view is marketing has to focus on data, building a world-class database, and there's lots of components around that in terms of, you know, building out the total addressable market, deduplication of the current database, out of offices, maternity leaves, hard bounces, soft bounces, etc. Content, developing the content that the buyers need at each stage in their buying cycle, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Lead nurturing programs, lead scoring programs, and lead management programs. And you cannot do this without technology. You cannot do this without a technology platform that enables you to manage the marketing funnel on top of the sales pipeline, which is being managed by the CRM system. Sales need to focus on the 4%. They need to be able to see the buyer's journey through from their initial activity right through awareness, education, and consideration. They need so that they can develop the insights for what the specific problem is, so that they can develop and pitch value early. They need to have consistent behavior, okay, across the entire sales team. There's no point in having a standardized marketing funnel if it all goes all over the place on a sales pipeline. So they need predictable pipelines, and they need technology. So this is what an integrated demand funnel looks like with a number of different stages. These are what the stages of those specific stages look like, with a lead status, an owner, a service level agreement between marketing and sales about what happens at each specific stage and how they progress through and what happens, etc. And if you're going to run an integrated demand generation process, you need one funnel, and this is a kind of schematic that shows you what that looks like. I'm skipping through these because you will be able to watch them and study them on the PowerPoints. So the difference between being average at this and being best practice at this is almost 5 times the number of deals won. The metrics are better at each stage. So what buyer personas look like. This is, here's a schematic for how you would start to break down the content that buyers need at each of the stages in their journey. So how if they're going to self-educate and self-direct, what do you develop to help your buyers solve problems? These are a whole range of the different lead nurturing campaigns that you can run. This is what a lead nurturing campaign used to look like, but when you start to dig in a little bit more and you start to go, okay, let's pick different buyer personas, let's look at what stage they're at in terms of prospect engaged leads, let's run campaigns against each of those pretty quickly. You can start to get lead nurturing campaigns that look like this. This is the breakdown of how you run lead scoring profiles. And okay, so just to come back on, to bring all that back to the to the theme of today is, okay, so it is essential for organizations to build sales and marketing capabilities in order to beat the market. So what are the big things you need to focus on? So firstly, organizations at the strategic level need to look at marketing sales as an investment, not expense. They need to know what it is that's wrong and prioritize that so they can fix it. And they need to target the capabilities that matter the most. Don't ever try to do too much. Do it in a crawl, walk, run, and tailor your approach to the stage of the company development. Think of your total organizational capabilities rather than your individual skills, and make sure you build a model so that you can keep developing it and running it. A couple of closing things to leave you with. When the buyers are starting to self-educate and self-direct, there's a lot of psychology comes into how you can increasingly engage them. We've got a blog post on our site, and we've got a couple of them talking around the psychology in modern marketing. There's some great stuff in there. Read it. Also, we've got a couple of ebooks coming up around the rise of the marketeer and strategic demand generation, the essential components. So that is all that I'm going to talk about in terms of setting the scene. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to hand over to Neil Armstrong. So Neil is he's head of group marketing and sales effectiveness at Space Solutions. He's comes from more than a decade in the pharmaceutical industry in such roles as global marketing manager, strategic business development, and he's taken that strategic marketing and revenue performance to businesses in the professional services, software, and most recently commercial property. Neil specialises in businesses looking for leadership and transitioning revenue growth through strategic performance management of their marketing and sales pipeline. So I'm going to hand to Neil now. Hi Neil, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. Great, over to you.
Good. Great. Well, thanks very much, Scott. Hello, everyone. Scott, you can take a nice big deep breath now. Thanks for running through all that. So let me just put that on full screen. So my focus of the presentation today is based on experience. It's my experience of implementing lead generation programs over a number of different businesses and different sectors. During the presentation, I hope to convey some of this experience in terms of preparing you for the challenges if you're just thinking about embarking on this, or hopefully maybe begin to change the way that you think about measuring your value as actually marketers, because I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's one of the key drivers for a lot of people beginning to look at or looking to increase the sophistication of their lead generation or marketing automation skills. Just a quick summary. Scott alluded to it there in that fancy bio, but I spent about 10 or 12 years in the pharmaceutical industry, which was a very interesting and dare I say working in terms of a marketing, because you had very defined databases. You knew who your customers and prospects were. It was very easy to buy Binley's list of data, and you were off and running. So targeting was very easy. Professional services was another sector which I began moved into after farms, and began to illustrate with, which is actually the sort of strategic direction, their understanding of the customer, the lack of prospect database, and these are key ingredients for really your marketing automation platform strategy and delivery. Moved into the technology sector. Again, I'll come back to some of the experiences I had there, because that was when I first began to kind of really implement a marketing automation program, and a key part of that was actually initially engaging with Scott and then making the right decision about which platform to really enable all this to occur on, and finally where I am now. So the software businesses, it was really implementing for two separate products, quite simple, very targeted marketing approach. Having proven the concept to myself, I then wanted to deliver it on a much grander scale, and so I joined Space Solutions a little under a year ago, and Space Solutions really constitutes 8 different businesses. So it's the Space Solutions group with 8 different divisions underneath it. So really taking the marketing automation platform and testing it as to whether scalability and its delivery and its results were as pertinent. So with that little bit of background, let me begin to fly through my slides, which basically a sort of rallying call, challenging question, and maybe some real honesty in terms of, so we're marketing people. What do we really believe that non-marketing stakeholders in our business would say about us? I think this is probably an important place to start. I've highlighted at the top of this list support sales. I genuinely believe that in a lot of places, a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, that marketing is seen as sort of the operational aspect of sales and a sales sort of support role. But other definitions that might come in here are, they're there to increase the brand awareness, they're event management, they're here to help us with our collateral. They manage the websites, they manage the SEO, and last but not least, the big favorite, which is the advertising and PR. That's what marketing does. Personally, I don't find that a very inspiring description of the type of things that we do. So looking to the right-hand side of the screen is, what would I really like them to say? And right up there at the top is I would love them to turn around and say, actually, our marketing team, our marketing person, they're a revenue generator. They're not just an overhead, they actually deliver financial results for the business. So other aspects that might see in here is, those that understand, they increase the size and quality of our prospect database, quality being a key one. Or, if there's sales guys you're asking, they might turn around and say, actually, they hand me qualified leads. So I get MQLs. I get MQLs from marketing. That's really the definition. Really the key part here is, I think, we need to start with understanding how we're perceived internally and then managing that expectation before we can really begin to deliver on our results. So just thinking about some of those activities, and I've entitled this kind of about a scorecard, qualitative and quantitative, because what I'm trying to do is in this presentation is progress people towards actually understanding how we might define that return on investment that we're trying to deliver on. So in terms of some of those vaguer activities about raising awareness, etc., how might we measure that success? And surveys are an obvious one, but they're generally expensive when you go out to market to test. They're not often repeated, so your statistics aren't exactly replicable over a period of time. We could be looking at web statistics, but one of the big challenges, particularly in the last few years since Google turned off several of its functions and its analytics, is that we don't really know who's at best. We can probably look at things such as new versus return, what is and isn't working, and increasingly, educating sales as to who and what. Who's been to our website and what they were looking at to inform their sales calls. That really isn't ticking the box either. Email marketing has been around for a while. Fantastic. Yes, we can tell who's clicked on an option, who's opened it, but really, how do we gauge overall campaign success? And by campaign success, I mean actually targeting a select group of people, a sector, and actually nurturing those prospects through. And the list goes on. So if we were to look at the quantitative side of how we might begin to operate, first of all, if we were talking about being revenue generators, we'd actually be able to point to kind of pounds or dollars as to what we were delivering in terms of our ability to develop the size and quality of the database. We would be able to put actual quantitative figures against those. The number of MQLs is an easy one to define. We've given you 15 leads this month sales, or 20, or whatever your scale. And then you can also measure how many of those have actually tracked all the way through to conversion. So again, tying back into that revenue generation figure. And finally, you can measure your pipeline. So in the same way that sales historically had a pipeline that they would look and measure in terms of engagement and likelihood of percentage conversion as a prospect track through that pipeline, equally, marketing should be able to look at their engagement level with target prospects and measure their readiness for that MQL status, that marketing qualified lead, to be handed over to sales. So selling the concept internally, hopefully we're all convinced that marketing automation is the future. It provides quantitative measurement, it delivers results for the business, and that's fantastic. But the first step is actually beginning to sell this internally, and embracing change I've kind of added to the end of that title, because at the end of the day, that is what you're doing. You're transitioning people away from their commonplace marketing activity, or the way that marketing is being perceived, and you're changing that perception. Now, this is a graphic that's supposed to represent some kind of sonar. It's probably the best way I've found of conveying in a very succinct way what marketing automation lead generation is, which is, instead of just banging your sonar out there, or messaging out there, you're actually looking for the areas that light up in terms of interest. So much like a submarine traveling through the darkness that wouldn't be able to see anything, it could determine ships, it can determine rocks. This is what we're trying to do with marketing. We're trying to look for those responses to our marketing communications that indicate readiness for engagement, or further engagement and nurturing. Once you've conveyed this, and most people have to say, when you begin to explain the sort of direct line approach that you might be able to have and execute through marketing to engaging your prospects, and the efficiencies around shortening the pipeline cycle for your salespeople, the fact that they'll have a higher conversion rate because you're obviously qualifying better. Generally speaking, I haven't found it a difficult sell. But there are a range of challenges, because once you get to the concept side of things, you're moving into the actual delivery side. So what are the challenges? So the first up is, as Scott's stated in his slides, you need a platform to deliver all this. And there are a number of platforms out there. My expertise, Sales Fusion is the one that I've elected to run with over the last few projects that I've been involved in. My experience of it is that it's an evolving platform in terms of its technical capability. It's not a huge enterprise system. The products that are sold out there by these enterprise companies, they're very good. I wouldn't knock them in any single way, but through the experience of reviewing these products, and then also obviously speaking to people in the industry, what tends to be is that they are as with all things large, quite difficult to change and evolve. And one of the huge benefits I've found with the Sales Fusion platform is that it is in its constant state of evolution, which as you're evolving as a marketer and your needs are evolving, and as as you move from that sort of crawl, walk, run, when you're looking to run, you're definitely seeing a platform that can support you in all those efforts. Technical support is also a key one, and I don't mean from your platform provider, although that is obviously key. Technical support, I mean actually from your IT guys or your web hosting company, because there are a number of technical elements that you'll have to put in play that for your common or garden marketer like myself are possibly a little bit beyond us. And with that in mind, you know, it pays dividends to have a good technical support base internally, or at least to have that infrastructure in place that you can rely on, configuration of various things. Websites, I mean, ultimately this is the receiver mitt of most of what we're doing. All traffic, etc., whether it's from SEO, and Scott talked about the multi-channel non-linear journey of a customer, what we're really trying to do is push them into the website, engage with our content, either directly from the mailing into the website or to arrive at the website and to track that progress through. One of the challenges you might find is that you need to evolve your website so that it actually engages in a sales way. Pages that actually indicate people who are educating, or pages that indicate people who are in a purchasing mode, much like you would have in a sales conversation. Moving from those sort of open questions to the closed questions, your website can reflect all that. And that's key for the profiling that you need to do in order to determine those MQL levels. Strategy and clarity, again, this is another huge one. We've talked about how the responsibility of marketing is now from the awareness, the education, the consideration phase. In order to do that, your knowledge of product or service has to be excellent, and I'll come back to that in a second. But in order to identify where to point your efforts in terms of sector approach, of your total addressable market, of the stakeholder groups, you have to have a clearly defined strategic goals and direction, and that quite often is a challenge. And I think one of the lessons I've learned quite quickly along the way is, as you're engaging with a new project and you ask whoever that senior stakeholder is within the business, how many prospects do you believe are in the market? If they can't answer that question, there's probably an underlying lack of strategy in there that you'll need to get to grips with very, very quickly. CRM, I think Mark's going to talk more about that, but obviously the ability to integrate with CRM and manage and measure that sort of continuity between all the effort you put in developing your MQLs and how it's translated through the sales process. Processes are key, as is a team structure to help you facilitate your marketing automation, whether it's from an operational perspective, as in that integration between that human integration between sales and machine, shall I say, the sales and the technology, and actually facilitating the development and nurture of the campaigns. And finally, budget. I think, you know, I go back to that comment I made. You are initiating change. Inevitably that's going to incur budget costs. You might be able to marry those off. For example, if you can speak to people directly through your mailing communications, do you really require an advertising and PR budget? So you might be able to offset those costs, but obviously there is a cost involved in the change. On the right hand side, ultimately though, this is about creating great content and for people to actually be able to educate themselves. And so I've just put in there, you know, in order to do that, you read fundamental things such as, you know, insight, really understanding the value of your product. You need to know where to position that content in terms of mapping it against those buyer needs and understanding where that buyer might be in their cycle. And I think some of Scott's slides there that he flipped through are excellent for capturing that journey and examples of that journey. So I won't labor that point any further, but really to me, content is the fuel of the entire exercise. So this is really how I distill down everything internally here. So I could repeat everything I've just said, and my MD, CEO, whoever my senior stakeholder group is, will probably have switched off about 20 minutes ago. So in order to really distill that down, I now really talk about reach, nurture, and acquire. From that point in, they can easily identify the elements that are involved for each of those. For reach, it's about building the database, understanding the total addressable market, who the key stakeholders there are within those that total addressable market, and then building that, whether that's through a direct build out, or whether that's through monitoring of website, looking for that engagement with the activity, identifying who those companies are, and then building them out from there, so a responsive nature, or getting them into web capture forums or webinars like this, etc. The nurture aspect, I think we're getting pretty familiar with, which is actually engaging with them at the right time in the right place with the right content and alignment with all that. And finally, the acquisition. I mean, this is the end goal. As far as marketing is concerned, I think that's about the lead scoring aspect, understanding where someone is in that journey. If they've opened a couple of emails, that's great, they're engaged, but that does not an MQL make. So you're really looking for that sort of interaction where their profile says they've engaged with a suitable level, that they are that educated decision maker that you want. So just a bit of a reality check here. So I've talked about implementing this in a couple of areas. So two of my first products that I implemented this when, one was called Foresight, which was a hotel software product. It was quite an easily definable product, and it was targeted at a market audience of about 16,000 in the UK. That was my first trip into marketing automation, and the success of it was measured quite simply by the fact that the moment we started to engage the process, the phone started ringing, and we literally had inbound phone calls of interest. The second project I worked on was for a product called Opt-and-Roll. This was targeted on a completely different market, again a technology product targeting IFAs. These people had a much more definitive need in terms of an event, and so really it was about coordinating with their identification of that need. And again, a very similar result, the difference being that this product, because it was in a launch phase, had no prospect database, no customer database, and had a very limited sales resource. In fact, it was the technical developers who were actually the salespeople. So that kind of illustrated actually the change in the salesperson's role, because now we were looking at people, if we could deliver them marketing qualified leads who were educated as to what the product might do for them, really at that point they wanted to engage with people that were technically more knowledgeable than them. And so the two married very well. And so without really extending our sales teams beyond the technical people and just providing them with a bit more selling skills training, we were actually able to engage with the market and deliver revenue from there. And then I had the desire to test it. So what we have is a sort of organogram here of the kind of 8 businesses of the Space Solutions group. There, from left to right, you have Space Solutions, which has a number of service line offerings, from consultancy, design, and then turnkey delivery, which are the terms we use in the commercial property world. But within that, we have a number of different services that focus on end users. So they sit there as an end user focus for anyone with a commercial property, office space, or industry, etc. The second column there are a mixture of end users stroke property intermediaries. So again, a similar but subtly different target audience that we're trying to engage with there. And then the third group are a very distinctly different target audience, because they're dealing with what we term managed contractors. So they work for businesses that are then delivering projects. So those 4 businesses may actually work for Space Solutions as they deliver a project. The point of this is to illustrate that using the marketing automation platform Sales Fusion, we've trialed and tested the concept with Space Solutions. We've established our processes, we've established the understanding within the business of how it all works. And what we're in the process of doing now is scaling that across all these other divisions, so that we've got key programs in place, so that utilizing the infrastructure, we can scale the success across all the other businesses. The databases will have to expand because the stakeholders groups are different subtly, but the key point here is that what took several months to get up and running in terms of Space Solutions, we're actually deploying it at a rate of weeks across the other divisions, which is very pleasing, and the results are beginning to speak for themselves, which is fantastic. This is my final slide, and in the title of the presentation and the billing for this, it was all about delivering return on investment and demonstrating that. This, to me, kind of summarizes some of the points that I said in the first few slides, which is if we are empirically defining our success of what we're doing and we're changing that perception to the revenue, revenue marketing, what you're able to do is begin to kind of summarize in actual sort of figures rather than qualitative work, success. So here we can look at stages from MQL to SQL. So how well are we developing the SQLs and handing them on to the SQL phase? How well are the salespeople handling that sales qualified lead to close? And then ultimately, from a marketing perspective, a really interesting one is how many of those MQLs are actually getting to close phase. So you're able to review that on a weekly, monthly, annual basis to see the effectiveness of what you're doing, which ultimately leads me to the conclusion, which is, if we're talking marketing, I believe we should be talking about revenue marketing. And if we're talking about revenue marketing, I think the ultimate tell of success really is about measuring it in pounds or dollars. How much, in terms of ROI, what do we deliver financially to the business? And I think what I see through the marketing automation platform is, and process, is a far more focused approach into delivering all the good stuff that we do, building awareness in the community, in our total addressable market, websites and digital management. All these things are absolutely relevant, but bringing it back into a context where we're actually determining the overall revenue and deliverables to the business. So that was my whistle-stop tour of experience with marketing automation.
Hey Neil, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I particularly like the last slide there where you, in 2 months, doubled what was the effectiveness of marketing qualified lead to close. So, and what I'd like to do now is I'd like to hand over to Mark Woodbridge, who is the senior vice. I'm just going to change presenter. So Mark is the Mark, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so Mark is Senior Vice President for Sales Fusion. He's been in B2B marketing, for 15, 20 years, implementing, managing, selling CRM systems. And as a marketeer, a CRM product manager, and a small business owner and director, Mark learned the importance of creating, managing, and closing new business opportunities. He joined Sales Fusion in 2013 to head up expansion into the EMEA, pretty quickly became Senior Vice President, which is a lovely American name, and through the development of direct end user customers and strategic consultancy and CRM partners. So Mark's going to talk to us about, on building off all the things that we talked about, if organizations are going to land new clients, they must, reinvent the sales process. So how do you turn a cold sales call into a smart sales call? Over to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Scott, and thanks, Jewel, for your attention for the next sort of 10 minutes or so. So what I'm going to talk to you about really is how the better alignment of sales and marketing can help generate better quality leads, and of course, help your businesses generate more revenue. So let's don't worry, the presentation hasn't broken. What I wanted to cover off with you is really the process of the B2B buyer's journey, because critically, as we've heard today, the power of the sale is often in the hands of the buyer. So yeah, they'll start with some form of search, which you hope is going to surface your site. Of course, there's a load of work to do around how you get them to your site, SEO, continual investment in your website, and you may choose to go down the lines of kind of pay-per-click campaigns, of course, as well. But when you get them there, is the site informative? Is it interesting? And the kind of work you can do around that, around providing great content. But what we tend to find is the website. Are you giving your website an opportunity for people who visit the site and who land on your site to actually convert as leads? When we talk about lead conversion or the site's ability to convert leads, we're not talking about putting your contact details up there, putting an email address up there. We're talking about landing page forms, lead forms that you can capture people's valuable data, and often gating particular content, so having to give up someone's contact details before they can get their hands on your valuable information. Now, we've heard again today, I'm not sure whether, I'm sure some of you know of Serious Decisions. It's a leading sales and marketing analyst firm, and they're saying that 70% of the buying cycle is self-directed. So the goal of us as a company is to try and surface that behavior to you. So what does this actually mean? Sometimes it means that your sales team doesn't really know who to reach out to, and I've seen examples over the last 2 years of sales team who are really paralyzed into inactivity of outbound sales. They're kind of waiting and hoping for the leads to come from the website. It's a bit of a false expectation, really. So what we've certainly seen is the huge reluctance of internal teams to do any form of cold calling. Cold calling still does work for a very, very focused target group. However, just referring back to Neil's slide of the radar, it is a very, very hit and miss approach. And of course, we hope to use our technology for our clients to direct their outbound sales activity. Okay, so let's have a little look at the ways that we can do that. So what do we all do as marketeers today? Well, first of all, an active marketing department does a number of the following different things. They create great, interesting articles that people want to download and review. You've got a lot of our clients are already running blogs on their site just to keep people informed about their business, give them an opportunity and a voice to get information out to different social media sites. The vast majority of people who are looking at more marketing automation do already, certainly in the UK, have some form of presence on LinkedIn at the corporate level. And again, we do have a lot of clients that run many different kind of events, whether those are webinars, whether those are physical events such as evening seminars, even entertainment type events, taking people to cricket or rugby or whatever is relevant to your industry and company and client base, of course. But all this does create a degree of noise, and it's very, very difficult if you're having a disparate email marketing system or a disparate lead capture system on your website to try and bring all this information together. Now that is really what we at Sales Fusion aim to do. We aim as a platform to collect all the noise that your leads are making digitally and kind of put those in the hands of the salesperson. So let's have a quick review of a common buyer's cycle today. Along the top of this graph, you'll see the kind of process that somebody might go through internally to buy a product. So they're making themselves aware of what solutions are out there. They recognize ones that could be a good fit for them. They'll then consider those, come up with a preference, and then justify it from a budgetary point of view internally. Now, how can you as a company impact these stages? Well, of course, it's great to be seen and great to be putting information out there as a thought leader in your marketplace. You're then in a position, once you've captured the interest of the person, to be able to help them validate the knowledge, validate your solution and increase the knowledge of that. And then they'll really be looking to move through that program. Now, the key thing for us is it's often today only at the competitive knowledge or the solution validation process that the salesperson can get their hands on the contact. What we aim to do is move the salesperson further up towards the solution knowledge and thought leadership stage to get involved with the prospect sooner. So let's review some of the quick benefits in aligning sales and marketing. If your sales team can get hold of the prospect sooner, then they're doing that because that prospect is engaging. So that'll drive more meaningful person-to-person engagement, which is, as we know, in selling, the relationship is key. The other thing about this, of course, as we all know from Marketing 101, is relevance and receptivity. The prospect should be receptive to the approach because they're investigating, they're looking at what you're selling. And it puts the control back into the hands of your salespeople. If a salesperson can control the sales process, then they're much more likely to close it. And also, there's a great internal relationship building exercise that we can provide through keeping the sales team excited about the leads that they do get from the marketing team. You will be able to see what they're doing with them, and if the salespeople don't like the leads, there's ways that they can push them back to the marketing team for further nurturing. And of course, the leads they see are only the ones that are marketing qualified leads that push through to sales. So key objective here, of course, is to increase revenue. Marketing profs, again, a very well-known US-based analyst on automation and marketing products. So from the companies who've invested in marketing automation, they've one key objective, and that's to increase productivity, lead volume, and sales revenue. So if that sits with your goals as a marketeer, then do please continue to investigate, as you're doing today, the kind of benefits that marketing automation can give you. Now, so is marketing automation a sales tool or a marketing tool? It's a marketing tool. So you have the marketeers who use the MAP platform, marketing automation platform, to create the campaigns, but it's really the sales people that are using that information from a point of view of reaching back out to the prospect to see what they're going to be speaking to the prospect about. So of course there has to be some degree of link, and as Neil alluded to, a marketing automation platform should link with your CRM platform, which then allows you to associate the opportunity values in your CRM platform back to your marketing campaigns to give you a nice clear view of, if you spent £40,000 on attending this event, what leads came from it, and what was the result of those particular leads in terms of revenue. So again, another quick recent study. This is a US-based study, but it was only last year. The view is that the UK is probably about 2 to 3 years behind the US, so this is actually much higher than it would be in the UK today. And the key figure here is the 45.1%, which says that 45.1% of sales team are accessing marketing automation data. Now, that's an incredibly high amount for the UK. The UK at the moment, from our experience, is probably only about 5% of sales teams that have access to marketing data that's anything more than a last click of an email. Quick 5 benefits to sales. It helps them regain control of the sales cycle because they're able to see who's interacting earlier. It maintains the CRM data integrity because it's in the salesperson's interest to put the people into the CRM system that they believe can influence their decision. So you can also nurture prospects and existing customers. We have some great case studies of where our clients have just nurtured their existing customer base, and then it provides a great insight to the buyer's behavior. Automate sales tasks. Of course, a good MA platform should be able to create opportunities, tasks, activities within CRM. So this is a quick quote from one of our clients that's been a client of ours since 2011. The key thing is it says that one of our sales reps now calls cold calls smart calls. They really enjoy picking up the phone because they know the person that they're going to be phoning is going to know who their company is. So with that, thank you for your time and attention, and I'll hand back to Scott.
Thank you, Mark. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to introduce Steve Whitmarsh, who's the Managing Director of RunYourFleet.com. I just need to make myself the presenter because I'm going to share my screen with you. Steve, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah. So firstly, Steve, so Steve has got just to introduce you, Steve's got a proven track record within the automotive industry. He was the youngest ever production manager with Land Rover, age 21. He moved to corporate sales for the Rover Group in '97 before moving to Volvo Car UK as the Southern Area Leasing and Rental Department Manager. A 2-year spell as National Sales Manager for MHN vehicle contracts saw exponential growth before moving to RAC to head up its fleet and commercial sector, where he delivered a significant turnaround in profits and growth over a 6-year period. In 2011, Steve established Run Your Fleet as a new innovative approach to fleet management, and is now established as a serious fleet management player with over 19,000 vehicles under management. So Steve, I'd like to welcome you, and I'm really interested in your talk about how to come out on top of competition. You know, you are worrying established fleet management players with industry-leading growth, but you have a minuscule budget, marketing budget, and a very small focused sales team. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Scott. That's a very generous introduction. Yeah, we do have a very small marketing budget and a small overall team actually. And automated marketing has helped us to achieve some of our goals. As Scott's already mentioned, we've been established for 4 years now, and we manage just over 19,000 vehicles. Our customer sweet spot is the SME sector, so fleets of less than 50 essential user vehicles. And we don't have any dominant sector. It could be a retail distributor, an engineering firm, a housing association, it could be public sector or private sector, and we do have full UK coverage. We've got some customers in Cornwall, some customers up in the Hebrides. It really does reach the length and breadth of the UK. We have a total of 12 employees, and we only have 2 telesales executives and 1 account manager. And I have the dubious pleasure of building marketing campaigns in a very part-time and amateur, I have to say, capacity. What problem did we need solving with marketing automation? Well, our product is a very low margin product. We're on average around 10 times cheaper than our competition in the marketplace, which is one of the reasons we've grown so quickly. But with that comes challenges, of course. With the margin being so low, we need to keep our costs as low as possible in order to make the business sustainable. And we needed to achieve rapid growth with the minimum investment in terms of marketing. And marketing automation has allowed us to do that. We've grown from 0 to 19,000 vehicles under management in 4 years. That's made up of over 1,000 businesses. And we've done that with only 2 telesales execs. And we spend £600 a month on marketing automation. We do spend a little bit more on a bit of PR and a bit of social media marketing, but not a significant amount. So as you can imagine, it's a very small budget. And having a product that is very competitive and meets the needs of the audience helps, but getting the message out in the least expensive way without any above-the-line marketing did require a different approach, and I'm pleased to say that it's been successful for us. It worked very well. Moving forward, our goals are to continue growth in a diversified product range. We're establishing and embarking on a wide range of new products over the next 18 months, and marketing automation is going to help us deliver those products into the marketplace. And something that we want to deliver and we'll be using our platforms for is class-leading communications to existing customers. We've got to let those customers feel loved and wanted. Without that, then we won't retain our customers. And of course, longer term, we need to continue to grow, and that's what we'll be using the platform for. The challenges with everything we do is about resource versus reward, and using the automated platform, automated marketing, we've been able to absolutely channel our resource where we can get the results. And the automated marketing platform that we use is absolutely embedded in the sales team. The sales team access it in its native form and use it daily for their telesales campaigns. And that, I think, is what is key to our long-term success. In terms of its uses and benefits, we wouldn't have achieved the growth without it. We did start, when we first launched the business, we used a basic email marketing platform which gave us click-through information, and it worked to a certain degree, but it didn't work in the way that our current platform does, which we use Sales Fusion, and we use it in a very basic way. We use it for drip campaigns where we might send 2 or 3 emails in a delayed chain to our prospects. Those prospects are identified through renewal dates of certain products and services that they take, and we utilize the lead generation score that Sales Fusion can create in order for us to focus our very limited resource more effectively. We are soon going to be using a full-time marketing executive, which will free up my time a little bit, and I'm very excited that we'll be able to use some of the other facilities that Sales Fusion can deliver, because I know that the ability of it is far greater than we're using. As an example, we sell a wide range of products into the fleet management market, but rather uniquely in the marketplace, we've de-aggregated our services, where our competitors will typically look to outsource a fleet, and a large fleet, to themselves. We will target our customers with selling them one of our products or services. So that might be rental management, or it might be breakdown cover, or maybe servicing and maintenance repair. And that is much easier, of course, for us to sell one of those products, especially on a telephone call where you have a very limited attention span with your target. But it also makes it easy to communicate by email in a very short, very quick and concise way. Our telesales team use campaign call down lists, and we prioritize by the lead score. And that lead score isn't necessarily generated from that campaign. It can be from historical engagement in our website or in previous campaigns. But we will use that to prioritize our calls. We get currently open rates of around 19%, click-through rates of between 5 and 10%. And our conversion levels of the calls that we make are approximately 10%, which I'm told is pretty good. Not being a marketeer, I don't know whether that is good or bad, but it certainly has enabled us to grow effectively. I've whizzed through that. Hopefully that's given people a bit of an insight into what we do with our automated marketing.
That's brilliant, Steve. Look, thank you very much. We've got quite a few number of questions that have come in, so we've got just a few minutes left. So I've got some that I'd like to start with, and I'd like to bring in Mark and Neil if you're there. But firstly, Steve, you have obviously made the transition from what was maybe quite a simple email marketing tool, and you've progressed to MA. What do you think I'm going to ask Mark next about what are the most common reasons he sees for people that make that transition, but in your experience, what do you see as the reason why you made the transition, and was that validated in the kind of benefits that you're seeing?
Yeah, the reason we made the transition was because we simply weren't delivering the results on our previous approach to the market. We weren't growing quick enough. We were spending quite a lot of money in above-the-line marketing via a marketing agency, and we weren't getting the return given the margins that we have in our business. We were looking for an alternative approach. Sales Fusion approached us just at the right time. We said we'll give it a go, and the results were quite phenomenal. Our sales more than doubled overnight. And it wasn't just through MA. There were other things that we changed at the time, but it was certainly a significant contributing factor. Our run rate in terms of additional vehicles added to our system went from 100 a month to 200 a month, and is now running at around 600 a month. New vehicles being added to our services.
Fantastic. And Mark, when you talk to businesses all the time around this, what do you see as the most sort of common reasons that people will progress from email marketing up to a marketing automation platform?
It's really what we tend to find is marketeers now know there's more information to be captured rather than just who's opened the last email campaign. And it's getting that total view of how somebody is engaging with email, plus the website, plus anything that they're downloading from the website, and they want to put all that information in one place, and then tell their salespeople about it. And simply, that's where we often get pulled into the conversation.
Okay, what do you think? I'm going to ask Neil the same question in a minute, but what do you think is the sort of minimum that what do organizations, companies who are, okay, look, I understand this approach, it kind of logically makes sense to me, and I'd like to think about, starting to look at MA closer with a view to sort of evaluating different platforms and the right solution for me and then deployment. What do you need to have in place before you can do that?
You do need to have a marketing. You need to have some marketing resource. You need to have people with at least some knowledge of digital marketing. You're probably sending your emails out internally yourselves rather than pushing it all out to an external agency. And you also need to align the objectives of the marketing around lead generation. So, if it's not just about what this campaign's done, it's about how many marketing qualified leads have we delivered to the sales team in the last month. So there's a bit about physical human resource, but also aligning the objectives and goals of marketing with sales qualified leads and also sales revenue.
Great. And Neil, same question, because you have, you've done this once. You've built a demand factory or a lead generation engine that was built on MA at Forth, and you were in the middle of doing the same thing again at Space. What advice would you give the people who have joined us today in terms of the challenges that what they need to have in place, and what are the big things that they need to focus on getting right?
I think one of the big differences between Forth and Space is the fact that we have, obviously with 8 companies, but we've got a much broader range of services. And I think services are a challenge because they're quite hard to pin down the actual benefits and articulate in terms of the insights, which leads to a difficulty in terms of generating great content. I think the benefit of working with sort of product in particular is the fact that it's relatively simple, I feel, to kind of distill that down and maybe sort of understand where that product fits in a kind of needs situation. But in terms of a service, when something is adaptable by the nature of the service, what Steve said there about being able to sort of, I can't remember the word he used, delineate, but be able to sort of go in with a specific, I think, and connect with that particular need at that time. I think that's probably a very good challenge. So I think probably apart from, the usual sort of challenges of setup, I would say actually content generation is a fairly key element.
Well, look, we've run a couple of minutes over. I would firstly like to take the time for everybody that joined us today on this webinar, and also to Mark, Neil, and Steve for presenting. We've covered a range of topics, which I'm sure there's probably 10 or 15 topics on their own that we could have run individual webinars on. So feel free, everyone, if there's whether it's about database or content development or lead nurturing. I mean, our experience is that the functionality in these platforms is not only critical for driving growth in terms of marketing, delivering sales ready leads or exit or about to action into the sales team, and enabling organizations to build their sales and marketing capabilities, but it's also a heck of a complex. The functionality is very sophisticated, so it's very easy to tie yourself up in knots and lose sight of what it is that you're trying to do. So we would always counsel a crawl, walk, run. So if you're Mark, Neil and Steve would all be happy to field emails and jump on a call for 15 minutes if there's something that you want to ask them around, like, just tell me how you did this or did that. We will circulate the presentations as the video afterwards. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us for today's webinar.